We light a flaming chalice to symbolize the unity of our beloved community, a community that we co-create, one that is more important than ever during this time apart. We gather from the ebb and flow of our lives, thirsty for connection to ourselves, thirsty for connection to others, thirsty for connection to the larger life. We say together, as we light this chalice, may all who gather now be filled, filled with joy and hope, filled with compassion and love. May we be filled so that we may pour ourselves out into the world.
It is not by accident that you arrived here this morning. You've been looking for something larger than yourself. You've carried inside a yearning, a hope for something more, a desire to belong. And so you went searching for a beloved community, a community with people who put no fences around love, a community with doors that are open to everyone, a community that could be a true home for your soul. And so you come today. Welcome home. Welcome to your home.
Good morning. Today we're going to start our song with I've Got Peace Like a River. Please join in and sing loudly from your home. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul.
If this were a usual year in our congregation, we'd probably have a really full sanctuary. We'd have the wonderful smells coming from the Weston Hall for the potluck that would come after this first service of the community gathered here. And you would have come with water from someplace important to you that we would all mingle in a bowl as a symbol of our community regathered. And yet this is an August unlike any other August in our church life, in our national life. And so this morning, still to give us a sense of community gathering through water, you were invited to send photos of water that is meaningful to you and or to share with us a memory in which water was key. We have a slideshow for you this morning of the photos we received, and Barb and I, while you watch this slideshow, will read some of the memories we were privileged to receive from you. As a child growing up on Long Island, a summer day at the beach was one of the more common yet cherished joys. At the beach that we normally visited, there was a large parking lot separated from the beach by a long tunnel under the fragile and beautiful dunes. Summer heat was magnified by the blacktop, and if you cared to take the time, you could see in the distance the sky reflected as an illusion of water. One memory that stands out clearly is that as you entered the tunnel, you could hear the distant ocean's waves. As you traveled along its length, the sounds would transition from those of automobiles to those that have been the coast's companion for millennia. When you exited onto the beach, as your eyes grew accustomed to the overwhelming brilliance of the sand, there spread before you was the blue jewel of the sea. The ocean will always draw me back to these memories, which will, like the sea, remain timeless.
Sweat from hard work on a hot day, interrupted by large cups of ice water. Back to sweating again. The nameless spring in the Hocking Hills, upgraded long ago with a pipe, allowing the water to flow into the jugs and bottles of so many people, with the clearest, tastiest, unpolluted spring water ever. The spring where Daddy filled jugs for decades and thought of my long-gone mother, born in spring. The dripping faucet and ice maker waiting to be repaired. Memories of the ocean at Cape Hatteras, my first experience of really big water. Sleeping to the sound of rain on a tin roof or a thunderstorm, remembering that Mother Nature does what she wants.
Past the forest and the field where the wild rushes grow, there's a lake. I'll take you there. Come. Where the rushes frame cattails as close and dark as cupped fingers, cattail fingers thick and soft, holding the sweet belly of the lake in the palm of a giant hand. And the lake breathes, painting the banks with an inhale both thirsty and serene. You'll see a boat there, moored among the rushes, cradled in the cattails. And if you climb in and lie down, you'll find the stillness is quite alive. And if you watch the wide expanse of sky for long enough, it changes, separating into a prism of colors, a dance of bright motes behind the eye, inviting your atoms back to their place beyond thought and beyond form. Come, there's a lake. I'll take you there.
I grew up a long, rickety flight of wooden stairs from Cayuga Lake in the Finger Lakes region of New York State. It was a wondrous place indeed, rich with deep woods and meandering creeks. And then there was the lake itself, ready for bone-chilling swimming and fishing. I was not a big fan of keeping the lake bass that I sometimes caught, knowing that they were destined for my plate at dinner. But I delighted in catching and setting free the lovely little sunfishes. I often waded in the shallow water at the lake's edge, collecting stones and tiny shells, marveling at the schools of minnows that flitted here and there. And of course, there was swimming and wild rafting adventures, during which my sister and I would paddle out as far as we could. I would lie on my back in the boat and watch the clouds form fantastic shapes and patterns, feeling the roll of the gentle waves, the pulse of the earth.
Set aside time in our service for the sharing of joys and concerns, experiences that you struggle with, experiences that you celebrate. And we bring those experiences alike into this sacred time as a way of looking for the meaning they offer our lives. This morning, our joys and concerns are ones that have remained silent, but are significant nonetheless. So in this time, I invite you first to call to mind the names and faces of people in your life that hold you up, that keep you going, that call you back when you wander too far, that restore you. And now call to mind the faces and names of the people in your life that you're not so happy they are there, and yet there they are. People that challenge you. People that say things perhaps you'd rather not hear, but maybe you need to hear anyway. People whose presence, as difficult as it can be, over time make you a better person. For the people we love and cherish, for the people we struggle with, the people who are our joys, the people who are our concerns, we embrace them all. Amen. While our church may be closed to in-person gatherings, the work of the church continues, and we depend on your generous contributions to do that work. You can still make those contributions even though you have to stay at a distance from the church. You can mail them in. You can also donate online through our website. We thank you for your generosity.
Good old days, and who shall wear the shining crown? Good Lord, show me the way.
As the name of the church I was raised in suggests, the Southern Baptist Church, being baptized was a central part of the tradition. And not just the tidy sort of baptism that's more common, in which a few discreet drops of water are sprinkled over the person, but the full body, full bore experience of being submerged, tipped over backwards and dunked all the way underwater, while you hope with all your might that the person doing the dunking will lift you back up, and soon. Churches that prefer this extreme sort of baptismal experience often have special places in the sanctuary called baptistries that are a cross between an oversized bathtub and a miniature swimming pool. So the minister and the person who is submitting to being dunked can walk down into the water while members of the congregation watch the whole process. So imagine you're being immersed in water, entrusting your well-being to a stranger who tips you over backwards while a whole crowd is looking on. You come up sputtering, water streaming from every pore, struggling to see and restart your breathing, while words about dying and being reborn into a new life are spoken over you, and all you want is for somebody to hurry up and hand you a towel. With that being my first experience of the interweaving of water and spirituality, perhaps it's no mystery that I've long had a hard time understanding why so many images of water show up in every spiritual tradition. Why for many people being near some sort of body of water elicits strong spiritual responses. Perhaps many of you this morning, after spending the summer under ongoing pandemic restrictions that meant swimming pools were closed and gathering on beaches was unwise unless you could find an isolated place just for you and your family, perhaps you also are having a hard time seeing the connection between water and spirituality. But that connection has been present across traditions and over time, through earlier times of earlier pandemics, and is present this morning when we're still celebrating our customary homecoming Sunday of water being gathered, despite our being unable to physically come together. The same water which destroys also gives life. We talk of drinking from well springs and being renewed. Water swirls around and through spiritual visions of new life, rebirth, creativity, peace. We go to water, we come back from water to find our way to remember and reconnect with what matters most to us. The transition we mark this Sunday from summer to the launch of a new church year is unlike any other, because the transition from summer to school and regular work schedules is also unlike any other. Familiar routines that would usually be resumed are not being resumed, leaving it difficult for us to figure out just what season we're in and what we're saying goodbye to as summer passes, and what we're welcoming as fall heads towards us, and where we're going, and where we've been, and what our lives are going to be like now. If this were a usual transition of seasons, what would we be sad to see leaving with summer? What would we be longing to have start in fall? And yet, without the comforts of routines we've known all our lives, without the comforts of one another's presence that we've long celebrated on this particular Sunday, what are we looking forward to? What are we yearning for here, now? For that is ultimately the abiding spiritual question, in season and out of season and across time, no matter whether a pandemic is present or our usual life is unfolding. What do you want most? And does the current shape of your life reflect that yearning? Or have you drifted off course? Maybe been drawn off course by the pandemic so that your greatest yearning is off to the side. Your energies are being consumed by people and activities you don't particularly want but can't get away from. What do you want most? The spiritual image of water casts the question in terms of water. What are you thirsting for? To be thirsty is to be driven by an urgency that you cannot control, for water is essential for life. What is it you thirst for? What does your life require that you long for with the intensity of a person traveling the desert longs for water? Set aside the easy answers to that question and look deeper into the dry parts of your soul. We all want security, safety, approval, respect, control of our lives. We satisfy those wants with what our culture tells us will satisfy them. Money, good homes, successful careers, happy families, loyal friends. So once you can tick off your list and say you have all that, are you satisfied? Or are you still thirsty? What is it you want most so that at the end of your life you can die happy?
Come on, people, come on down. Come on down, don't you come on down. Come on, people, come on down. Come down in the river to pray.
Curious, I think, that the lyrics to this song, variously attributed to an enslaved person, a resident of Appalachia, and singer Alison Krauss, sometimes sing about coming down to the river to pray, and sometimes about coming down in the river to pray. That small difference of a two-letter proposition, to versus in, speaks volumes about what yearning does to us and how it drives our lives. A simple desire, a casual preference, a wanting that's easily satisfied takes us to the river's edge, where we may discover that just being nearby is enough. But a deep yearning, a thirst for God, for love, a thirst will not let us stop at the edge of the river, but will demand that we dive in, that we give everything in order to satisfy that thirst, that we risk our very lives. Consenting to follow a yearning wherever it leads and whatever it requires is costly, which may be why we so often settle just for getting to the river, just catching a glimpse of it rather than going all the way, giving up everything, and diving in head first. The invitation is given. Come on, people, come on down. Don't you want to go down? And maybe we answer, well, not this time. This is far enough for me. I'm not quite ready. In a culture that has skewed the meaning of spirituality to have only associations of good feelings, our spiritual thirsts have gotten glossed over, misinterpreted as consumer cravings that are easily satisfied by purchasing one more electronic device, taking one more trip, accumulating a little more money, a little more stuff, a little more time. In many ways, we may have forgotten what real yearning is like, the cost it takes, the suffering it could entail, and the powerful sense of satisfaction that it offers if we follow it wholeheartedly. Those traditions that include baptism as a central ritual propose that being baptized ushers one into a new spiritual life. I heard those words as a kid, took them to mean that after baptism I would feel differently, feel better about myself, about my world. And it was those assumptions that gave me the courage to step into those cold baptistry waters and let the minister tip me backwards. If you've ever played that game, sometimes seen as a trust-building exercise in which you fall backwards and hope someone will catch you, then you know how vulnerable one feels falling backwards. For me, falling backwards into water intensified that feeling of vulnerability because I didn't know how to swim, because I was not entirely sure the minister could lift me back up since I was taller than he was and probably outweighed him. But I overcame those fears and let the baptism go forward, let that feeling of vulnerability take me over. I went under, and obviously, being here today, emerged without a hitch. The difference promised as a result of baptism did come, just not the sort of difference I had imagined. For none of those lovely feelings of peace and contentment and knowing Jesus was my Savior and God would provide all my needs, none of those feelings washed over me with the baptismal waters. Instead, I felt nothing other than a vague relief at having the whole thing over with. That absence of the difference that was promised did, however, set me on a path that would ultimately lead me away from that church and into Unitarian Universalism. So perhaps I was saved after all. The last line of the song asks, "Good Lord, show me the way." I did get shown the way after going to the river. The way of a spiritual journey that invited me to follow my individual thirst for meaning, that offered true community, that allowed freedom to search, that taught me to trust my own experience.
As I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown, good Lord, show me the way.
As we head down to the river, we may believe that we're simply studying about the good old way, that our present assumptions, our current beliefs, will be confirmed. But water has the power to destroy, to overwhelm, to change everything, as we discover each year when hurricane season comes around. Water barrels through our lives, sweeping away everything in its path. Yet the waters of destruction can also be waters of life, satisfying an endless thirst. What seems to determine the outcome whenever spiritual waters of upheaval and change, of chaos and dislocation begin threatening our tidy little existence, are the fundamental beliefs we have about that water. Can it be trusted? Can God, can the universe be trusted? Can I trust myself to have the resiliency to float rather than sink, to swim rather than thrash about, to be reborn rather than destroyed? No doubt I could have been spared some anguish when I was baptized had I recognized that water is buoyant, that water will hold me up when I lie back into it without fighting, in a spirit of trust. After all, nobody has ever drowned in a baptistry. The waters of our lives have washed us up into the community gathered online this morning to begin another year of our shared spiritual journey. This pandemic year in our church will be hard to predict and not look like anything we've ever known. We will know times of flooding, of being overwhelmed. We will know times of drought, of struggling with emptiness, loneliness. But the virtual waters that result when we gather in a spirit of mutual respect and support are waters we can depend on to keep us afloat and carry us to the shores we desire. As we come here again and again, week after week, down to this church river to pray, to study, to search for the way to be together. Welcome back. Welcome home. Know that we miss you and will always be here.
The ocean is a big place, and I am just a little boat. But I chart my course and I drop my own anchor. The sea is always changing and full of dangers, but I sail on. through terrible storms, up and down rolling waves, past giant sea monsters, and around treacherous rocks in search of my friends. Together we dive down to the bottom and climb up to the top. We go round and round in circles and never want to stop. Full steam ahead to what feels like the edge of the world. And still I sail on. Because now, no ocean is too big for a little boat like me.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Before we conclude our service, just a reminder of the conversations with the search committee that you're invited to remain online for afterwards. These conversations are open only to members of the congregation, as it is only members who will ultimately choose the church's new minister. So if you visited us this morning or are not a member, I'm sorry, this will probably be the only time you're ever not invited to something here. Please come back next week and we'll invite you to everything. But for those of you who are members of this congregation, the decision of who your next minister will be may be the most important decision you make as a church. And there are many steps in that process, and you don't want to miss any of those steps. So please hang around today and be part of these conversations with the search committee. And with that, now we'll conclude our service.
We extinguish our chalice flame, but never the fire of commitment and community.
The closing words are from T.S. Eliot. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Shalom,
Salam,
namaste,
blessed be.
stay well.